Trends, innovation, economic impact. Stay tuned with us for the next episode. Anne Hornung-Soukup, very welcome with us today.
Thank you.
You are a specialist in mobility. What can you tell us about this very interesting theme?
Mobility is one of the most interesting subjects in life today because mobility means moving people.
Mm-hmm.
And moving people today is not only important for economic reasons, extremely important for economic reasons, but for every other reason to do with life, family, education, culture, and climate change. If we want to move people efficiently and deal with climate change, part of that is mobility, mass transit, different ways of moving people and not in individual cars.
Talking about different ways of moving people, what are the trends today?
An overarching trend, which is that for 100 years, for the last century, we've built infrastructure for cars. And we're at the peak of that. We can no longer do that because of climate change, because of congestion, pollution, noise, stress, economic reasons. It costs money for people to be stuck in traffic jams. The saying is that if you're in a car and you're in a traffic jam, you're not stuck in a traffic jam, you are the traffic jam. So mobility means getting people out of individual cars and into ways of mobility that are more efficient.
How do you imagine or would like to see the future in terms of innovations in this field?
There's a lot of innovation going on, and it's very, very exciting. Part of the innovation is just more mass transit rather than cars, and it means dedicated bus lines, it means the new train, it means bicycle paths, and it means walking. All of this is good for health as well. And then the TPG, my company, where I chair the board, is in the process of doing various projects of innovation, and one of them is a TOSA bus, which is a fast-charging electric bus. Mm-hmm. So it takes away 3 types of pollution: diesel particles into the air, noise, and visual pollution, meaning lines overhead. And the TOSA now is not just Geneva, Switzerland. It's been sold to Nantes in France, and it was just sold to Brisbane in Australia. Great success.
In your position, have you been, you and your team, inspired by other countries or the region in the world?
We're always inspired by best practices everywhere. So we're inspired by the top places for mobility, which are Singapore, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Amsterdam. But I would say that we're inspired also by 100 years ago, which sounds funny, but it's very true. The peak of rail travel and rail infrastructure was in about 1920 in all of Europe. So we're trying to get back to that point. That's all we're trying to do, is get back to that point, and that will take cars off the road and reduce congestion.
So 100 years ago?
100 years ago was the peak of rail travel in Europe.
If we go back to today, we can talk about the Limousine Express. What can you tell us about Limousine Express that will be launched in a few days?
The Limousine Express is about to be launched. This is a huge trans-border rail project, the biggest in Europe today. Mm-hmm. It's going to link 45 stations, many, many kilometers of rail. It's going to be a true metro subway for the Geneva area, and it links Geneva and France. Geneva has a lot of jobs. It's a very dynamic economic area, and France has a lot of people that we need for those jobs. So this is a very exciting project, and it's huge, and it's going to be launched, and it's going to change the world of mobility in Geneva.
What can you tell us about mobility as a word to the very interesting interview today, the end of it?
Mobility as a service is the trend of the world right now. Mobility means every type of mobility. Why should my company sell only tickets for the bus or the tram? We should be selling a ticket that includes every type of mobility. People drive a car, of course, from time to time. They take a bicycle, they walk, they take an electric scooter. This is mobility. The trend of mobility is changing completely, and it's very exciting.
What, as a last question, talking about mobility and environment, which is very trendy but very important.
Extremely important. And I feel as though public transit, mass transit, is part of the solution. We are part of the solution. Whereas you look at some companies, particularly the oil companies, and they're part of the problem. So it's very exciting to be part of a company in a sector which is part of the solution. Part of the solution of mobility is more mass transit and less individual, polluting, noisy, congesting individual car traffic. So this is mobility, as I say, is one of the most exciting sectors in the world today.
Anne Hornung-Soukup, Thanks very much for this interview. We were very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This interview is in participation with American International Club. Thanks very much for being with us.